based on the Scottish market, because obviously it's very different to England. In
Yes,
Scotland, you get a home report value up front. That's obviously all sellers have to give you a home report.
That's right.
So most bridgers in Scotland will look at the home report value, and then they'll base their bridging on the home report. Now, obviously, that is then available to the surveyor that comes back out to value it after it's done up. So they'll always know in Scotland what it was valued at previously. Sure. So if you're going, I guess the question's coming at if you're creeping towards that paying full market value, but you know that you can add value and then sell it for more, how do you mitigate the fact that the valuer comes back round and without you even telling them, they can look it up in the register?
Yeah. So again, you just got to do a good job, really. So there is no guarantee, and there's no point saying there is a guarantee. There isn't a guarantee, but you've got to make the case. Yeah. It's about making the case. It's documenting here's a robust explanation of why I bought it for 100, but it's now worth 150. Which, incidentally, here's some sold comparables that validate the fact that it's sold. So it all comes down to making the case. If you're going to refinance a property for more than you've paid for it within a matter of weeks or months, you're always going to have to justify the increase. Now, here's the thing that, again, a lot of investors miss, and that is that they think that it's possible to buy it, and I had one recently. Said, I've got this property, it's worth 800. Seller's motivated, they're getting divorced, and if I can complete quickly, they'll give it to me for 600. Well, not a bad deal. So can I then buy it and get a mortgage on it straight after for 800? Okay, what are you doing to it? Nothing. Why not? It doesn't need anything. It's perfectly fine. They spent a lot of money on it. Okay, so here's an important thing, that it's almost impossible to get a mortgage lender to value something at 800 when you bought it for 600, and we'll just use those figures because it came up recently, when you've done nothing to it. So the typical thing a mortgage lender's valuer would say is, okay, you bought it for 600, you're telling me it's worth 800, now, take me around the house and show me where you've added £200,000 worth of value. And when you say, I haven't done any work, I'm just good at negotiating, they will say, okay, then we value it at what you paid for it. Okay, so the learning point there is that in isolation, with no work carried out or anything else to do it. So if you did no work but you got planning permission, you've added value. Because a property with planning, a certain planning is worth more than a property without planning. So it doesn't have to be that you've done work. So show me where you've added value. Well, I've got here. Look, here's the permission to put a massive wraparound extension on it. It's going to significantly increase the living space. So in isolation, mortgage lenders valuers will not recognise just buying cheap. Buying cheap and doing some work, or buying cheap and getting planning, or with converting, or whatever it is you want to do, they'll recognise that, and you can buy cheap as well. But just buying cheap doesn't work.
If you wait 6 months, will they?
No.
They still won't?
No.
They won't reflect that.
No. So, now, one of my little, I said I use these little phrases because they hang and they stick a bit. So the phrase I would use on the training, on the workshop here is, keep the ones you can refurb, but sell the ones you can't. Keep the ones you can refurb, but sell the ones you can't. In other words, if you can genuinely buy a property that's worth 800, but because the seller's motivated, you can buy it for 600, but you can't refinance it at 800 and get your cash back out, why don't you buy it and just sell it? Bank the cash. Yep. If you sold it for 750, that's a decent payday, isn't it? Bought for 600, did nothing to it, sold it for 750. Now, that might work more easily in some areas than others. If it's a more buoyant area, You know, and again, you've still got to evaluate. You've got to do a risk mitigation exercise and say, well, you know, how strong is the market? Is it going to take me 2 years to sell it because there's, you know, it's very flat at the moment, or can I turn it around, you know, quickly now? The longer it's going to take you to sell it, the more bridging is going to eat away at your profit. Yeah. So you've got to do that evaluation as well. So it's not just a case of can I, you know, sell it, but there are cases where, you know, it's worth just buying and selling.